All right.
Uh, Take it from here, baby.
Oh, great to be here. So I watched it. How many of you guys were watching Ben's one earlier today? Is that just nods and stuff? Yeah, a lot of nods. Cool. So I was watching that too, and it was really good stuff. And so much of the stuff I think we'll both cover at camp, given that we have more than 15 minutes each. But I was just trying to think about something a little bit different that he didn't already cover today. So I think what I want to talk about is pretty common for folks that are kind of intermediate. You might already be doing it. Is these sixth chords up and down the neck, right? Maybe you don't do this already yet, or maybe you do this already yet, but it's just such a good banjo technique that can be kind of used. It's a friendly thing to do because you can roll through it, right? As opposed to some of the more technical stuff where you maybe doing single string or melodic or that kind of stuff. This is a little bit more I don't know, straightforward in my mind because you can take one roll, like a backward roll, and whatever chords you know, you don't have to know every chord to do this, but whatever chords you do know, you can take this and make music with it. So let's play a little bit using it. What I'm doing is a backward roll, so first string, third string, fifth string, right? Just continuously doing that. And the great thing about backward rolls or forward rolls, but any three-note roll really, is that you get the syncopation from it, right? So instead of kind of the more square type of rolls that kind of reset predictably on the beat, they can be useful too, right? There's definitely a place for them, but the three notes is really cool because it resets in a strange place each time. So even just doing that is a great exercise. Well, that's a forward roll, but the same thing applies to your backward roll, right? So if we take that kind of syncopated roll, it's pretty easy to execute once you do it for a few minutes. You'll probably have it down. Then the more tricky part of this is knowing where to go, right? So just briefly want to talk about, these are so important to really have a good facility with as banjo players, the diatonic chords through up and down the neck. So since we're banjo players, we'll just start off in G, the key of G. And it's good to know a little bit of theory. You don't have to understand all of this stuff fully to be able to play it on the banjo, but I think it certainly helps, and it'll kind of free you up to be a little bit more creative on your own, right? You'll be able to kind of explore around a little bit more easily. But so we start with G, and the idea is that we take the G major scale, which is G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, right? One sharp, F sharp. And we move all those notes up a scale degree. So we've got our first chord, which is made up of G, B, and D. Yeah, and probably a lot of folks know this one. It's like the first four-note chord everybody usually learns. G, B, D, and then we have another G. Now we move each note within that chord up a scale degree. So the G turns into an A, the B goes up to a C, the D goes up to an E, and then of course everything that happens on the fourth string also happens on the first string, right? So this is an octave apart, so everything we can just do identical. So we have another A. So now we have, this forms an A minor chord, right? But how we got there is kind of important by moving up a scale degree on each string. So, and you could almost practice this, where you could definitely practice this on one string, actually. It's a good way to start out if you're just new to the theory side of things. It's just starting with picking out all your notes on one string, or your G major scale, up and down. Do that on every string, and you'll be more familiar with where those lay out on the frets. But once you've done that, you could do it the same thing with the chords, right? So that the G becomes an A minor, and then we want to move everything just up 2 frets. That becomes a B minor. The same shape, that minor shape. And then we move up to the C major, And I'm just using the same theory behind all this, right? The B becomes a C, the D becomes an E, the F sharp becomes a G, A becomes a, well, the B becomes a C. So that's the first 4 chords, right? And if you haven't done this stuff, I would just spend like a week getting really comfortable with these 4 chords, up and down. You can roll through all the notes on the chords. It's a bit clunky sounding, it's quite hard to execute, but it's a good exercise. Right? Something like that, you know, roll was like 4, 2, 3, 1. Now I've got a muscle memory of those 4 chords, right? So to continue through, we want to go all the way up to G again. We're on C. The next one up is D major. So we can just move the same shape up 2 frets. And then we want to continue up. Now we're getting beyond the 12th fret. It's scary stuff. We're going to go up to E minor. So we're going to use that minor shape again, right? Now the last one before we get to G again is a little bit tricky because we've done E. Now the next scale degree note name is F sharp, and this is actually an F sharp half diminished. Now, don't be scared off because it's not as weird as it sounds, that chord. You could think of it as a half diminished chord, F sharp half diminished, or you could think of it as a D7 with the F sharp and the bass. So if we come down the octave, which we're probably a little bit more familiar with, often people start with this D7 chord, right? If we add, it's a bit of a stretch down here, but you can kind of do it if you try hard enough. You add the ring finger and the pinky finger on the 4th fret. Now that's an F sharp half diminished. You could also think of this, instead of trying to figure out, well, what's a half diminished chord and figure it out that way, is moving up. Each one goes up, so those are the notes that make the F sharp, right? And just using the G major scale. So we finally get back to G. Let's go through that whole sequence, and if I'm moving too fast for some folks, we'll definitely be covering this at the camp. I'm sure there'll be tabs galore. But for now, so we start on G, we're going to move up to A minor, 7th fret, and then B minor on the 9th fret, up to the C on the 10th fret, D on the 12th fret, D major I should be saying, E minor on the 14th fret, and then we've got that pesky half diminished chord on the 16th fret. Or if you want to, when you get to the E minor, you can swap octaves and come down here and do the E minor, and then you can do the F sharp half diminished slash D7 chord, however you want to think of that, and then you go back to your G. So that gets us through G major. Now, that's kind of a lot to take on board if it's new to you. I would sit with that for a good amount of time, just getting really comfortable with those different chords. But if you are already familiar with this stuff, what I would say the next thing to do, and this is kind of counterintuitive, but sometimes it's harder to do less of that chord, right? So it's a bit clunky to have to move around 4 notes all at once, and we won't get that open ringing sound we kind of want to hear from the banjo. So what we want to do is get used to, we want to visualize that full chord still, so we know where we're coming from in a theoretical sense, but we want to be a bit freer so we can move around quicker by just playing the strings that we're going to roll on, which is the 1st and the 3rd string. This is what a lot of people do, right? So if you haven't got the full chords down yet, if those are still brand new or that's still something you want to work on, I would say just keep working on that until you're really comfortable with knowing how to execute them on the banjo and knowing what each chord is, right? So you've got that theory down. They light up as you're playing around the neck. But to move on from there, I would say the next thing to do is to take away those 2 strings. So then we're just working with these 2 notes, right? Now I'm still thinking about this as A minor, but it's only actually 2 notes, so it could be a lot of different chords, in fact. B minor, C, D, E minor, F sharp, half diminished, G. Then we start to roll through it. We could do the same thing with the backward roll, right? G, A minor, B minor, C, D, E minor, F sharp half diminished, D7, G. Now maybe you're kind of like, I got that down ages ago. I'm an expert at those sixths. And you know, it's common, so maybe some of you have done this stuff before. But exploring all the options, right? So instead of just going up or just going down, can we maybe skip over one, go back to one, skip over one, go back. So what I'm doing is I'm going G straight up to the B minor instead of playing the A minor in between, right? A minor straight up to the C, B minor straight up to the D. I'm kind of talking and playing is really hard. C, E minor, D, F sharp, E minor, G. Now we're starting to get closer to music, right? A little bit, right? We've got this little theme, and we've got a roll happening, which sounds really nice on the banjo. Are there any questions, by the way? Some of you guys are just utterly confused or anything. Just feel free to type them in the chat here. Oh, I guess I'm not on the Facebook if that's happening, but thank you. Sounds nice. So it does sound nice. It's a very pretty sound, and the thing I like about it, like I said, is just that you can physically do it and get a lot out of it. Just this one scale, you know, up the neck in chord form. Well, you could study it for years. In fact, I just got re-inspired to like really workshop this stuff again after 15 years, and there's still so much for me to get out of it and learn from it. So like being on the right fret. So maybe another thing you could do is, you know, this is a little bit bluesy because we're kind of now strictly not in the G major scale, but that's a really nice way of getting up from our first chord, G chord shape, to the first inversion G chord shape, like the D shape, a lot of people call that. You could just use the one in between it, right? Or you could maybe syncopate how you get there rhythmically, you know. So I'm kind of mixing the rolls. I'm doing this really fast because it's hard sometimes to slow things down. You just do after a few years, but maybe bouncing off the roll in different ways, like using 5, 3, 5, 1. Yeah, could I explain the roll I'm using again? So mostly I think I mix between a backward roll, which is just 1, 3, 5, and a forward roll, which is 5, 3, 1. And you can loop those, and that would get you to, for so long, keep you amused. But that's forward, backward. I'll try and mix the two. But every now and then I think I also do like a 5, 3, 5, 1 kind of roll. Now, a common tune that people play the solo of this tune in this exact way is Roanoke. So, you know, that tune that the A part goes, that melodic A part that's a real scalular up and down kind of thingy. The B part lays out really nicely. Something like that. So now we're kind of getting out of the exact like G major scale theory side of things and using it. And so, for instance, I used it on the C chord, right? So now I'm kind of transposing key, I guess. Says, are you using just the index finger to get the two middle minor strings? Yeah. On the left hand, you must be talking about maybe. I am using the index finger. Yeah, index and pinky. And I'll mix it. That's not strictly speaking. Like, I'll kind of do whatever I need to do to get the idea that I'm trying to play or figure out onto the banjo. But yeah, commonly I use middle finger and pinky, and then index and pinky to do those two different main shapes going up there. So when you get to the G shape chord, I'm using middle pinky, and the minor chord, I'm using index pinky. Now that doesn't mean you have to like change as you're going up and down, but I find there's time for that. I don't find it to be too cumbersome to do that. And often if I use the same fingers for like the major shape, and I was using the pinky and the index, I think I would just play the wrong fret sometimes because it feels too like close to me. But it's just personal preference. You can really do whatever you please, really. Yeah. Any more questions directly like related to this or anything banjo wise? Yeah. So I'll just keep yammering because that's what we're doing here. The power of being the one that's not muted. Okay, so one other thing, let's see. So basic thing here is roll and explore these chord shapes. If you're a little on the weak side with the theory of it, I would work on that because I think I've seen a lot of students who, kind of memorize the shapes I'll tell them and get a pretty good amount out of this still. But when you explain it to people, how to make it make it work in different keys or in different shapes, it really opens up some doors for your playing. In terms of if you're at the point where you're jamming, you're improvising, you're writing your own solos, like if you're a more advanced student, then definitely digging into the theory side of how these shapes are made and what sharps and flats are in what keys, that side of things is going to really help you. So but if you're brand new to it, I would say just play with the one thing and really come up with different rolls, put on a backing track and just like try it out on your own, try to improvise with these shapes even. One other thing to think about is if we take those two notes, right, the B and the G from that G major chord, that could also be, if we only have the two notes, it could also be an E minor with those same two notes, right? So E minor is still a diatonic chord of G, and if we imagine we're starting like E minor, and then the next one up would be the F sharp half diminished, the next one up would be the G major. We can do that from down here as well, right? So we got this E minor shape. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with this, but middle finger on the 5th fret, 4th string, index finger on the 4th fret, 3rd string, ring finger on the 2nd string, 5th fret, pinky just below it on the 5th fret, 1st string. That's a really useful minor shape. And where we have it is E minor, right? We're on the 5th fret with our middle finger. Now the next one up, F sharp half diminished, is here. But I'm using that theory, right, where I'm thinking, okay, this is my starting place. I'm using all the notes in the G major scale, and I'm moving this note from G to A, this note from B to C, this note from D to E, and this note from G to A, right? And that makes the next chord in the G major scale. It happens to be F sharp half diminished. If you want to show up to your jamming buddies, hey, you guys know your F sharp half diminished. And then we do the same thing. We keep moving up, right? The A becomes a B, the C becomes a D, where were we? F sharp becomes a G, the A becomes a B, and we have our more friendly common G chord, right? So to recap that, we've got the E minor at the 5th fret. We've got this maybe unfamiliar F sharp half diminished shape, also a D7. And then we got the G, more garden variety, D shape G, at the 9th fret, and we just continue this all the way up. I'll just kind of go through it because we're here. We go back to that same minor chord shape at the 10th fret for an A minor, and then move it on up 2 frets, B minor, and then the next one would be C major, using the D shape at the 14th fret. Everybody's like looking down, really hustling here to get to these chords. So if I'm not going too fast, and then let's change octaves because it just gets squirmy up here if you're not used to it up in the way highs. But so we go down to our C, which is where we were, and then we move that up 2 frets to our D. Now these are really simple chords that you're, probably, if you're intermediate advanced players, you've probably done a lot. But D, and that brings us back to home base, right? E minor. So the interesting thing here to me, this kind of blows my mind still, is that we do the same thing, but it just, we start on a different shape. But it's still G major, and we're still going through those diatonic chords, right? Using the G major scale to make all the chords we can up and down the neck. But where do we start? Do we want to start on this shape? Do we want to start on this shape? There are probably others too, but we don't want to confuse things too much. So, for those more advanced players, like one cool thing to think about is to going between like the G and the E minor, and then go between the A minor, which was our first, second chord in the series, and the F sharp half diminished. So these can be, they're almost like pals, they're buddies, right? G, E minor, A minor, F sharp half diminished. B minor, G, C, A minor. So what I'm doing here is I'm pairing the first series of chords with the second series of chords. E minor, F sharp half diminished, G major, A minor. First series again, G major, A minor, B minor, C major. Second series again, E minor, F sharp half diminished, G major, A minor. And what that creates is some really cool, useful stuff you can jam on. We might be doing like a song. Oh, sorry. Please show the F sharp half diminished again. So the shape, it depends on where you are. There's a million different shapes for that one chord, but a good one to start with is just thinking of it as D7. So do your D7 down the neck that, people start with, the 2-finger D7, and add on, if you will, the F sharp notes. So we've got the 4th fret, 4th string, and we've got the 4th fret, 1st string. It's not super comfortable there. It's a bit of a stretch. If it's too much of a stretch, you could actually just do one of those F sharps with your pinky. I like to do this. And then the D7. So that creates a really nice chord shape, actually. But back to what I was saying, and we probably should wrap it up soonish because I'm probably talking you all silly, but the G major and the E minor kind of together are pairs, right? They're actually like the relative minor to that major chord, but anyway, they're super closely related because they have 2 of the same chord tones. So we could go back and forth and create this cool little lick, riff, whatever you want to call it. Or we could roll on it. Or we could chromatically go between the 2. That sounds weird, but it's cool. And, you could do the same thing on, that's just the same. See, and this is my knowledge of, because I know that I figured out, I want to do G major to E minor and go between them chromatically. And the fact is that I've spent a lot of time learning all these chords all around the neck. I can quickly figure out, I also want to do it here. I also want to do it here. So it takes a lot of time, but once you get once you get a few of these chord positions under your belt, there's a lot of exploring you can do, and you can be really creative with it, which is fun. So yeah, so mess around with the minor to the major. Hey, Bennett, you're like, all right, stop talking now.
No, no, no. This is awesome. This is awesome. I'm just hopping on because I feel like you're coming to a close. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Cool. Yeah. Any last questions before we sign off? And awesome.
Cool. Well, BB, thank you. We're so excited to have you for camp along with Ben Krakauer for the banjo faculty. Um, Camp is going to be May 15th through 17th, and you can find more details at tunefox.com/camp. I hope everybody joins us. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good time.
Awesome.
Cool. Thanks. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, BB.
Yeah. See you guys.
Bye.